ever, like, plan out the perfect date, get all those romantic tropes in there, only to find out your partner isn't, how do I put this, as into it?
It happens.
Yeah. So today we're diving deep into Jay Shetty's 8 Rules of Love to, kind of unpack how our past experiences, especially in love, can totally shape how we approach relationships today.
And what I find so fascinating about Shetty's approach is that he doesn't just skim the surface. He goes deep, bringing in this ancient wisdom from Vedic traditions, specifically this idea of samskaras.
Okay, samskaras. I got to be honest, that sounds a little intimidating. What are we talking about here?
I hear you. It's a new word for a lot of people. Basically, think of samskaras as these invisible molds, right? Shaped by our past experiences. And these molds, they influence everything, how we approach love, how we connect with others, even simple things like how we express affection.
So it's not just our parents' relationship we're talking about, but everything.
Exactly. And Shetty actually uses this really funny anecdote about his own marriage proposal to really drive this point home. So he's planning this big romantic gesture for his wife, Roddy, right? Horses, boat ride on the Thames, the whole 9 yards. Turns out, Roddy's allergic to horses.
Oh, no. You're kidding. Talk about a mood killer, right?
Right. And it's funny, but it highlights something so profound. Shetty was so caught up in these generic romantic notions that he didn't even stop to think, wait, what does Roddy actually value?
Such a good reminder for all of us.
Yeah.
Right? But how do these samskaras, these molds, actually show up in our lives? Yeah. How do we know if they're messing with our love life?
They can pop up in so many ways. Think back to those early crushes, those all-consuming teenage romances.
Oh, yeah. Those were intense.
Right. Shetty says those super intense feelings we experience early on are partly because our prefrontal cortex, the part of our brain responsible for, rational thinking and decision-making, it's not fully developed yet.
Wait, so you're saying we're basically running on pure hormones and wishful thinking?
Pretty much. And those early experiences, even if they were kind of messy or didn't work out, they create these powerful imprints, these samskaras, that can actually stick with us and influence our adult relationships without us even realizing it.
So even if a certain type of person wasn't good for us in the past, we might still find ourselves drawn to them because of those early experiences.
Exactly. Shetty calls them first love attractions. And he outlines a few common ones that honestly can really trip us up. Have you ever found yourself drawn to the bad boy or the bad girl? That type, a little rebellious, maybe a little emotionally unavailable.
Oh, haven't we all been there? That whole thrill of the chase can be so intoxicating, even when you know deep down it's probably not going to end well.
Exactly. And that's often a samskara formed in those early relationships where passion gets mistaken for genuine connection. Another super common one is the opulent one.
Okay, the opulent one. Yeah. I'm listening.
So this is where we're initially drawn to a partner based on a single dazzling quality. Maybe they're incredibly successful or strikingly beautiful or have some other halo effect that kind of blinds us to their, deeper character.
So smitten with the facade, not necessarily the whole person. I can definitely see how that could backfire.
Oh, absolutely. And again, it often goes back to those early samskaras, those imprints. Maybe we grew up equating success with worthiness, or we were conditioned to believe that external beauty was the ultimate prize.
So it's almost like these unconscious beliefs are driving the bus, even when those beliefs aren't serving us well.
Exactly. But the good news is, once we're aware of these samskaras, once we kind of bring them into the light, we can start to break free from those patterns that aren't serving us anymore.
So it's we're rewriting the script. I love that.
Yeah.
But where do we even start?
Well, Shetty offers this really powerful tool, and he calls it the solo audit.
A solo audit. Okay, now you've got my attention. A solo audit. It sounds kind of intense. Am I going to need a spreadsheet for this?
Not quite. No spreadsheets required. It's actually pretty straightforward. The idea is to carve out time to just be by yourself, really by yourself. Go to a movie, grab dinner at a restaurant, maybe even take a little solo vacation, things you might not normally do alone.
Okay, I could see how that could be a little out of the comfort zone for some people.
Yeah.
So what's the thinking behind all this alone time?
Well, it's about tuning into your own thoughts and feelings without all the usual distractions. When you don't have someone else to fill the space, you start to notice those little patterns of discomfort or insecurity that might be subtly influencing your relationships.
So it's we're holding up a mirror to those blind spots, those things we might not even realize are there.
Exactly. And I think it's important to emphasize this isn't about becoming a hermit or anything. It's about using solitude as a tool. a tool for self-discovery. And it actually ties really beautifully into Shetty's next big idea, the first ashram of love.
Okay, ashram of love. I'm not going to lie, that sounds like something out of like a romance novel, not a self-help book.
It does have a certain ring to it, right? So in Vedic tradition, these ashramas, they represent different stages of life. In the first ashram of love, it's all about cultivating self-love.
So not love with someone else, but love for ourselves. I mean, I get it. You got to love yourself before you can love someone else, right? We've all heard that. But how does that actually work?
It's not just a catchy saying. It's really the foundation. Think of it this way. You're not looking for someone to, like, complete you. You're looking for someone to share the journey with. And you come to that journey as a whole, integrated person.
That's such an important distinction. It's not about needing someone else to make you happy, but wanting to share your happiness with them.
Exactly. And Shetty, being Shetty, he doesn't just leave us with this, like, vague idea of self-love. He gives us tools, practical exercises we can actually use. Like, have you ever thought about, like, if you could go back in time, what advice would you give your younger self about love?
Oh, for sure. I think I'd tell my younger self to worry less about what other people think.
Yeah.
And to trust my gut more.
I love that. And that's essentially the heart of this meditation Shetty guides us through. He calls it the younger self meditation. It's this powerful visualization where we actually connect with that younger version of ourselves, that part of us that might still be carrying around, old hurts or insecurities.
Okay, that's giving me chills. It sounds really powerful.
It really can be. Because we're not just, like, giving advice. We're asking our younger selves what they need, what they're afraid of, what messages they've internalized about love and worthiness.
So by understanding those early experiences, those early samskaras, we can start to, like, heal those old wounds and make more conscious choices in our relationships today.
Exactly. It's about rewriting those old scripts, but with compassion and understanding, not judgment. And this, I think, is what makes Shetty's approach so brilliant, this beautiful blend of, like, ancient wisdom and modern psychology.
It's so true. And speaking of modern relationships, there's this other big theme Shetty tackles that I think is so relevant for couples today, the idea of mutual growth.
Mutual growth. I love that.
Because it's not enough to just, like, find someone who checks all the boxes, right?
Yeah.
It's about finding someone who challenges you to grow and evolve both individually and as a couple.
Yeah.
Don't you think? It's like, yeah, you want someone who gets you, who you connect with, but you also want someone who pushes you to be your best self.
Right. Absolutely. And Shetty uses this really cool analogy to describe this dynamic. He talks about the guru-student relationship.
Oh, interesting. So are we supposed to be signing up for, like, couples meditation retreats now?
Not necessarily. It's not about, like, literal gurus and ashrams. It's more about embodying that spirit of mutual respect, guidance, and, like, this shared pursuit of living in alignment with your purpose, your dharma.
I love that. So it's about encouraging each other to chase those big dreams, even when, it might push us a little outside our comfort zones.
Yes. And actually, Shetty shares this really insightful anecdote about his own marriage that speaks to this. So early on, when he was starting to experience some success in his career, he kind of noticed his wife, Roddy, wasn't, like, overly impressed.
Really? You'd think your partner would be, like, over the moon about your accomplishment.
Right. He was initially, like, looking for her validation. But what Roddy offered was something so much more profound, unconditional support. Like, she loved him for him, achievements aside. And it was a real turning point for Shetty because it taught him the difference between true love and, like, seeking external validation.
Wow, that's such a powerful distinction. It's like the saying goes, behind every successful person is someone who believes in them. But what about those times when, like, those beliefs, those fundamental values, maybe they clash a little?
That's where things can get a little messy, right? But Shetty doesn't shy away from that. In fact, he dives headfirst into the whole realm of conflict, but with a really unique perspective.
So he's not advocating for, like, avoiding arguments at all costs or just, brushing things under the rug.
Not at all. He actually encourages a certain type of conflict. And get this, he draws inspiration from a kind of unexpected source, the Bhagavad Gita.
Wait, really? The ancient Indian epic about war and spirituality? What does that have to do with, like, resolving an argument with your partner?
It's actually pretty brilliant. Shetty uses those teachings about, like, overcoming ego and finding inner peace, and he applies them to how we approach conflict in our relationships. He says instead of trying to win an argument, we should aim to purify the ego.
Okay, I'll admit I'm intrigued. But practically speaking, how do we actually do that? Like, when I'm feeling angry or unheard, my first instinct isn't exactly to, channel my inner yogi.
Totally. I get it. It's not always easy. So Shetty breaks it down into a practical framework he calls the 5 steps to peace.
5 steps to peace. Catchy. I like it.
Right. So it starts with P, pause. Like before you say anything, take a breath, collect your thoughts, then E, empathize. Try to see things from your partner's perspective. Even if you don't agree, can you at least understand where they're coming from?
That whole stepping into their shoes thing, so important, but man, it's tough sometimes.
Oh, for sure. It takes practice. Okay, A is for articulate. Once you've had a chance to, calm down and consider their viewpoint, express your own feelings and needs, but do it clearly and respectfully.
So no blaming, no shaming, no low blows.
Exactly. Okay, C, collaborate. This is where you work together to find a solution that works for both of you. Remember, it's not about one person winning and the other losing. It's about finding a compromise that strengthens the relationship.
It's a team effort, not a battle. Love that. What's the final E?
Evolve. So after things have cooled down, take some time to reflect. What were the triggers, any patterns you noticed? This step is crucial for, personal growth and also for avoiding the same arguments down the road.
It's like turning those disagreements into opportunities to learn and grow, both individually and as a couple. Makes sense. But what about those situations where, despite our best efforts, we just can't seem to get on the same page? What about when those differences feel, insurmountable?
That's where Shetty's next rule comes in. Knowing when to elevate or separate.
This is the hard part, because sometimes no matter how much you love someone, sometimes it's just not going to work.
And that's okay. He makes this really important distinction between tolerable differences and intolerable differences. Tolerable differences are those bumps in the road, those things we can work through, even if it takes effort and compromise.
So think leaving your socks on the floor versus fundamental disagreements about, life goals.
Exactly. Intolerable differences, though, these strike at the core of who we are, our values, our vision for the future. These are the non-negotiables.
Like finances, having kids, or even basic lifestyle choices.
And Shetty's point is it's not about trying to change our partners or force them to fit into some idealized mold. It's about recognizing when those differences are just too vast to bridge.
And that's where the separate part of elevate or separate comes in.
Right. But he doesn't frame it as failure. He emphasizes that ending a relationship, even though it's heartbreaking, it can actually be an act of love for yourself and love for the other person, because it allows both people to step into greater alignment with their own paths.
And that leads us so beautifully into Shetty's final rule, the gift of heartbreak.
It's about recognizing that even in the midst of that pain, that feeling of being utterly broken, there's this profound opportunity for growth. He has this one line that just really stuck with me. Something is breaking, but you are not that something. It's a reminder that your inherent worthiness, your capacity for love, it remains untouched.
You are not defined by your heartbreaks.
Exactly. And Shetty, he offers really practical advice on how to navigate the healing process. He encourages us to, allow ourselves to grieve fully, to lean on our support systems, to prioritize self-care.
It's about nurturing ourselves back to wholeness.
Exactly. And ultimately emerging from that experience with an even deeper understanding of ourselves and what we truly want in a partner.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Jay Shetty's 8 rules of love, remember this. Heartbreak, however painful, can be an incredible catalyst for growth and transformation. It can teach us more about ourselves than 1,000 happy relationships ever could. And who knows? It might just lead us to a love even greater than we ever imagined.